What's happening, people? I am Tommy, and you are on the Love Boat. Barbara and Jane Aldrich, good to see you. Jeremy Fowler, what's happening? Glad that you are here. Roberto, what's up? Tommy Bird's here. Brock Bandy's here. Caroline in Canada. Denisha, Murph, what's happening? So the gang is coming in. Honey, I'm glad you're here. Kristen Melinda, Mike Bragg, yeah. I'm glad to see you all. So there's a lot to talk about today. Ann from Mass, good to see you. How are you? Meredith Lynn, good to see you. Glad that you are here. Hey, Amy, welcome. So the first thing is that Lisa Smith, good to see you. Hey, Cindy G. Oh my goodness, YouTube is so ridiculous. One day they got us using handles in here, the next day with back to our names. Yeah, it's well, that. And Ashley J, good to see you. So one of the first things we're going to talk about, because this is just getting all kinds of headlines, is that Sean Combs survived an attack on his life in prison. Apparently, according to the story, or should I drop it? Allegedly, a guy came up and put a knife to Diddy's throat. Christine Beale, good to see you. But somehow didn't drag that blade across his neck. It was a homemade shank, according to his attorney. And people are running with this story like it's an absolute fact. Like the people in the Bureau of Prisons wrote up a report on this. This is the stuff that we talked about a while ago, but now it's really getting run with because a lot of the stuff. Hello, Horton Fissel. Oh man, can we get some ones for Stephanie and for Horton, who just lost his nephew? Man, that's tough. I'm sorry to hear that. Carrie, good to see you, Carrie Holberg. I am really sorry to hear that. What are you doing to me? Sorry. My computer thinks now is a good time to ask me if I want to update it. I've never updated it. I never will update it, but it continues to ask me at the most inconvenient times. He's not in prison already, in answer to your question, Cindy G. But people like to say, well, technically, he is technically in prison, but he hasn't been transferred to his new yard. But once you get that conviction number, once you get your judgment and commitment, you are basically a prisoner. However, they're going to transfer him out of that center. This was a plan on the part of his attorneys. And if you pay attention, it seems like they're trying these things one after the other. They're throwing, hey, Lux Lizard, they're trying everything but the kitchen sink to try to get this dude out. And the new narrative is he's not safe in there. The guards want him dead. The inmates want him dead. This is the same thing I talked about when I called the guy a rat. This isn't a new story. But if this is your the content that you do the most, you kind of have to continue to run with this. There's another story gaining an awful lot of traction about LeBron James. Put a 2 in the chat if you're not a LeBron James fan. And if you love the guy, put a 4 in the chat. During the Diddy thing, there was an awful lot made about LeBron James going to Diddy's parties and this. Hello, Debbie Zito, and he may have gone to a bunch of Diddy parties. That doesn't mean that he went to freak-offs. People got really out of control on that, like the satanic panic kind of out of control. Everybody was being molested by Diddy. There was nobody in Hollywood that wasn't part of that, and it just got kind of absolutely insane, right? I'm not a big fan of LeBron James. Just never really been a fan of him, right? You love the background? It's a pretty cool background. I like it too. We may stick around with it. Wharton. No, man. It is a family affair around this campus. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that we all feel that pain. Anytime somebody loses a family member, it reminds you of the times you have. It's one of the reasons that you get more sympathy and empathy during times like that than any other, because most people have felt that pain. A lot of times it doesn't work that way, but this most assuredly does. So the LeBron James story goes like this. He is being investigated. He is so arrogant, Mike Bragg. That's why I don't like him, honestly. Kevin Hoffman, good to see you. When he came out and did it's not going to be a 3P to 4P. Like, he came out day one and said he was going to beat Michael Jordan's records and just stuff that, anyway. He is the story, the narrative that everyone is running with, because it gets you a bunch of views, especially if you put a shock face like this in your thumbnail and it says the feds investigating the mob, right? LeBron James involved. LeBron James is not technically in the sense of the word involved. The investigation is going something like this. There was some gambling that has been going on illegally. So you're much like inside information. If you work for a basketball team and you're a trainer or you're a guy that tapes ankles or whatever, and you find out LeBron James and one other of your big stars are not going to be playing in Wednesday's game, and you can tell people that, or they get scratched at the last minute, right? Their ankle injuries, whatever the hell happens. And you can call someone and go, hey, LeBron James isn't playing on this. If the casinos have not stepped up the odds because there's no longer your number one scorer and the guy that runs your team, then the odds go through the roof and hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, get spent on that. It's just like fixing, or insider trading in stock. It's very, very similar. You know information that the rest of the world doesn't know that you can leverage to make more money at places like casinos or bookies. This is what is alleged to have happened. LeBron James, although mentioned in this lawsuit, was mentioned as in he wasn't going to be able to play. And they don't even mention it, but they say they use initials and letters. Letters and numbers to signify who the guy is. You get the feeling it's the best player on the team, so people are assuming it's LeBron James. I'm sure he's being talked to, but this is not a smoking gun about LeBron James. And I don't think it passes the smell test. Allegedly, the guy that got busted for this got $2,000 from the mob for tipping them off. Can you imagine LeBron James being in on this for a couple of grand? Because that, $1 billion he's making doing what he's doing. Hello, Christine. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. That's very kind. This is probably not likely for a billionaire to do this. Now you could say Michael Vick. Yeah, Michael Vick did some really dumb stuff. LeBron James has been going a long time in the NBA. I don't see him getting involved with the mob for the purpose of trying to pick up a few more bucks. I don't think that one passes the smell test. Now, I need to talk about something that came up last night, because I say that we do not have a rapist in the White House, and a lot of people called me on this, and then they said he was convicted of sexual assault. I'm looking at it. SA, right? Sexual assault. In the state of New York, there is also sexual abuse, which literally means any kind of unwanted touching. The woman that took Trump to court, this is worth talking about. The woman that took Trump to court first came out with the story in 2019. That was also the year that they first decided that they were going to make the law that this was the first woman to ever use. That seems to me to be stinky. She had been in the press for a long time talking about this happening, and by a long time, I don't mean going back decades. I mean since she decided she hated Trump and he was in office. But it occurred, according to her, in the 90s. She can't nail down a date, which makes it very difficult to say, well, I was out of town at that time, or here's what I was doing. I can check my calendar. If you're, say, a billionaire who has people that work for him and he takes notes and he writes things down, he could say, well, here's where I was at such and such a time. But if the victim can't nail down a month, well, then that's kind of a problem for that. He was not found guilty of rape. And this I find fascinating. Maybe you guys can help me out with it, because I'm not the brightest dude in the world, for real. But the jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. That's a really fast jury coming back. But the jury found that he was not guilty of rape, which is what she said happened, right? That he went in there and raped her. But the jury said, I don't believe that, but I think he probably put a finger in her, and I'm not trying to be rude or anything else, digitally penetrated her, if that's better. How does a jury believe that the person's story that they told isn't true? So they're just going to extrapolate to something smaller than that and come back with a charge of, because they knew it wasn't going to pass the smell test under rape. This is my opinion, but it gets way worse. I say that we have to apply critical thinking to all of these things. She claimed to have had 2 witnesses. Both of them worked in media, right? Worked in far left media in New York. And I'm not saying far left media in New York to be disrespectful. 90% of people that work in media in New York say that they are left leaning individuals, right? 86% of Manhattan voted for the last 3 presidents, give or take 1 to 1.5%. But it gets so much worse. Whether you like this guy or not, critical thinking is an important thing. Over the course of Trump's 4 years in office, he got 200 articles that were written about him that were absolute BS that you can prove. Now, I didn't do this. Fact checkers went out and found these things. So many things that you take for granted. He said you should inject bleach. If you actually look at that story, that's not what happened. There are good people on both sides of the equation, right? In the same exact sentence, the dude said, I'm not talking about white supremacists. Obviously, they need to be condemned. To take a sentence like that and just use the first half of it, you should probably be tried for that. That's abuse of free speech. That's ugly. It's a lie, and it gets perpetrated. Joe Biden said it, I believe, 59 times on the election trail. This is a guy that said there's good people on both sides, talking about Nazis. It's not true, but you keep repeating that BS over and over again. Do you know how many of those 200 stories about Trump happened in 2019? 1 a month, 3 a month, 4 a month, 70 of them throughout the entire month. Throughout the entire year, just peppered from January 1 on. And that's the year that this woman comes out and hits with the rape story, along with everything else that's going on. The state of New York also then hit him for the hush money case run by Letitia James. I won't even get into Letitia James, but I'll tell you this. The prosecutors in both cases took ungodly amounts of money to get elected from George Soros and his ilk. This is not hard to research. Now, he does it through a intermediary. And by that, I mean they have a political action committee that he donates to, and then they give tons of money to the prosecutor. $1 million for the person that prosecuted him in the rape case. $1 million to a person's campaign coffers who's running for what? Prosecuting attorney or whatever the hell his job title is going to be. Seems like a lot of money funneling in there, doesn't it? But it gets worse. 100 people were chosen for that jury. If you take into account that these people had, just pick one of these BS stories, appeared in the New Yorker. You know how many people in Manhattan read the New Yorker? And there was an article that said Trump's Me Too moment, rape allegations backed up by, they had to recant this. He won money suing over a lot of these articles, but the people never see the reprints. The people never see the retractions. So most of the people in New York, the Trump lawyers said, we can't get a fair trial in here. So I started thinking to myself, you know what? I guarantee you there's a math equation that can tell you what the odds are that you can find a fair trial in a city that has 90% media that is left, right? All of the articles done on this guy are negative. They talk about him being a Nazi. You know how many times that term was used in New York papers? Calling this man a Nazi. Whether you like him or not, he sure as shit in him Nazi, right? Got to tighten up our game a little on some of the truth stuff. All of this stuff stops making sense when you start looking at it critically. The whole world says Trump likes little kids, right? They're all screaming this. But when he was 49, the woman that he followed into Bergdorf's to touch was 50-something. Not to mention that this is a time in his life where everyone he was associated with was a supermodel. Maybe the guy decides to rape somebody in Bergdorf's. But you know what? That smells to me. That smells bad. The two witnesses happen to be wildly left-leaning liberals who work in the liberal media, 90% liberal in California, in New York, in Manhattan. So you can go to these computers and say, I'm going to give you some parameters. I want you to run the odds. And here's what I came up with. There were 100 people that were used to find that jury. 70 of them said, probably honestly, or they just want to skip jury duty, there's no chance that I can be objective in this. Can't stand Trump. 70 of them said, I just cannot be objective in this trial. Well, that's a bad sign if 7 out of 10 bail because they can't be objective. Maybe they needed a change of venue. Huh? Your Honor? Well, Your Honor was appointed to the bench by Bill Clinton. And I think that's a conflict of interest and you should probably recuse yourself. And I know people are going to go, well, everybody is put to the bench by somebody. Right. But not someone whose wife just lost to somebody. Right? That seems to be something that maybe he would step back and recuse. Right? Guru, good to see you. But no, he didn't recuse himself. Every single decision went against Trump in that trial. But I plug in the parameters and I say 70 people bailed, so there's 30 left, with a 90% media and an 86% of the population of Manhattan voting for the Democratic candidate in everything. Higher in some cases, but I'm just giving you the president one. Last 3 times they voted. 1.5 difference, but right at 85. One was 86. There was one that was even higher. And then you got to put in stuff like this. Well, how often do people actually lie? Like, can you look up studies for this and figure it out? What people, are most people honest? Is that something that most people believe, right? And what you come up with is this. The average person, right? About 60% say they lie once every 10 minutes. In a 10-minute conversation, they're going to drop one lie. You can also take this and do studies of how people on juries are honest or not honest when you're going through the voir dire process, which is just where they're supposed to be able to eliminate people who are obviously biased. Of course, you got 30 to work with, and you got about 5 strikes or 7 strikes, depending on what court you're in. So if everybody is left wing, then there's my Friday's going good. Thank you. It's fantastic, actually. So now you've got 30 people, right? 86% of the city is left-leaning, 90% of the media. Now, can't take into account all the stories they heard. That's not something you can put into an equation. But without that, do you know what it came up with? Did you mean to leave that running? The water? No. I'm looking at it. Okay. I promise you it is. Wow. So I said, looking with just those two parameters, BC, I love it. What are the odds that they can find a fair jury in a place like this? Not taking into account 200 BS stories that had to get recanted in 1 year. And if you're thinking to yourself, that probably happens to every president. No, it happened about 40 times during Biden's entire presidency. Trump averaged more than 50 a year, but it ramped up real bad in 2019. They threw everything but the kitchen sink at him because they were getting into that next election cycle pretty quick. So this is when they decided to try to really destroy the cat. And this rape thing in a place where, according to the computers, right, 5 different models, by the way, you got a 1 in 7, or I'm sorry, it was 400, wasn't it? 1 in 470 million chance of finding a jury. By the way, I said to AI, throw in every probability that you possibly can to make this number smaller. It started at over 140 million to 1. That's a lottery ticket. That's the odds of you finding a jury that is actually not biased in that city, in that environment. And I'm not taking into account the crappy articles, the BS, all of the stuff that went on. But your prosecutors bought and paid for by George Soros. There's no way to deny this. You can find it. Fortunately, all those donations are recorded. And then Letitia James, same thing, except Soros straight screwed up and donated money to her personally. Didn't funnel it through a PAC. His family also donated because there are caps that you can give to people. So everybody in the family dumped on him. Right, here, have some more money. Here, have some more money. Here, have some more money. This is a fairly twisted concept, people. Doesn't pass the smell test. If you believe for a hot minute that that was a fair trial, you're kidding yourself. You're kidding yourself. You remember that laptop that everybody freaked out about that belonged to Hunter Biden? Do you know that the FBI knew what was in that laptop a year before all of those people signed off and said it's disinformation? If that doesn't make you angry, then there's something wrong. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. For real, I don't care if you vote in the middle. Christine, have a great night. That should make you angry. It really should. It should also make you angry that Hillary Clinton's destruction of 30,000 emails would have landed the 85 of you watching in prison for up to 12 years. If you're rich and you're powerful, you can do anything you want, even if it's treasonous. All of those people signing off saying that they knew that laptop was BS was to try to keep that man out of office. That is stealing an election, people, and that is a serious problem. It really is. That's a serious problem. And then what do? They accuse him of stealing the election through Russian interference based on something called the Steele dossier. And you know what? These things sometimes over time, well, they'll gain momentum. You'll say things like, well, we're looking back at a really, odd time. How about today? No, they've chased that down. There ain't a shred of truth to anything in the Steele dossier. It has been absolutely debunked at every level. Hillary Clinton paid for that research. That's a crime family, folks. That's a crime family. I'm sorry, but it is. The Clinton Foundation and their division of it, the Clinton Global Initiative, was built by Hillary Clinton when she was in office. 84 of the people that met with her when she was in office donated to that charity. If that makes any sense to you, you can put a 1 in the chat. If you think that ought to be illegal, put a 2 in the chat. So basically, if you don't pay me, you're not going to get to sit down and meet with the Secretary of State, where you're going to pitch whatever the hell you hope America is going to give you money over. Or, in the case of Switzerland, you don't want to have to open up your books and show the United States of America tens of thousands of names of people that are in there. Now, Hillary will pare it down to 4,000 names for you. Probably gone through by all of the different agencies that we have, CIA, FBI. Find the dirt bags. We'll turn them in. Find guys with criminal records. Find guys that have done this, that, or the other, right? That's cool. That should piss you off. Then she holds a press conference to announce it. Not something that normally happens with the Secretary of State. But yeah, we figured this out. And the owner of the bank, right? The owner of the bank, that bank ended up donating unbelievable amounts of money instantly after that decision. If it takes about 25 minutes of doing some research on this, and you gotta wade through a lot of BS, because if 90% of the media is pushing left, you got any idea how much research you got to do to get through that? I'm trying to look stuff up, and you type something into a search engine, and the search engine gives you 6 sources: CNN, MSNBC, left-wing publications, print left-wing stuff. But if that's what you get out of Google, I promise you're not getting the truth. And it's not going to be any better if all you're looking at is Fox, right? You actually have to start looking, maybe look at something outside the United States. Look at how other countries report on us, because they don't have a dog in the fight in the same way. Or look at news feeds, right? What is said before they bring somebody on, and then they go, hold on, let me bring on an expert who's going to tell you how bad the other side is. There'll be a school shooting, and there won't even be anyone yet identified or buried, and they'll be blaming it on each other. And this has gone on so much, right? Go back to the Trayvon Martin incident in Florida. That the shooter in that, Zimmerman, they immediately said, this is a white dude, he's a MAGA dude, and they made such a big deal out of it in all of the papers. He sued too, but he sued for another reason. We'll touch on that. But it was such a narrative that when they found out that he was half Hispanic, they went with, well, he's a white Mexican. God help us. That sounds racist to me. If that sounds racist to you, feel free to chime in. But that sounds racist to me. But then what they did was they took the 911 call of him and edited it. And they did it just like they would do to Trump. There's good people on both sides of the equation. Whack! Get rid of the end of that. Except they literally edited it. They made it shorter. And it made it sound like the caller, the person at 911 said to him, can you identify the person? Can you tell me anything about him? And he said, not really. He's got a hoodie on. You don't hear any of this. He's got a hoodie on. It's really hard to tell. I think he's black. And that's not how it went down. There was a conversation with a woman. Can you tell what color he is? And he goes, honestly, I can't. He might be black. I don't know. Yeah, I think he might be black. They edited this thing to make it sound completely different. He got a payday. Got a huge payday. How about the MAGA kid that was standing in front of the Native American? Remember the narrative of that? Like, I watched that and thought, that little scumbag. Then I saw the entire clip of film and went, they crucified this kid for nothing, right? They crucified this kid for nothing. The kid made hundreds of millions of dollars suing all of these places that smutted him up. He's rich. he's big time rich. But you got any idea how many times these things happen? And here's the problem, folks. Some of these settlements are $15 million. If you can damage the reputation of a sitting president by 4 percentage points and taint a jury pool in a city like New York to believe every single thing you say, it's worth it at $15 million a clip. Ask George Soros, right? He'll give you $15 million to drop any president 4 points. There are people out there that want to manipulate the United States in every single way possible. Queen Keish, good to see you. Barbara Wade, what's happening? Right? This is what's going on. If they can destabilize our currency, they're going to make trillions of dollars betting on it until the dollar crashes. Why do you think George Soros is giving money to the people in Antifa? Honestly, what good is going to come out of giving money to the people in Antifa? We're going to do all of those righteous things that these people want to do, right? Because they have a lot of great ideas. Getting rid of prisons, getting rid of the police department, right? All of these things are solid. See how it's working out in New York. Get rid of bail, right? Go ask the people in New York how well the no bail thing is working out. And you watch. Next, they're going to go a little bit, oh, I don't know. This is an interesting question. I've met some people in my life that are all bad. I really have. And I would have argued this for a really long time. I met Drew Peterson, and I'm telling you, there wasn't a lot of redeeming anything in Drew Peterson. I've looked into the eyes of serial killers. And I promise you, there are some evil people on this planet that are particularly all bad. But you know what the problem is? The problem is governments can turn people all bad quickly. I believe that every one of these people that get elected go in there with the greatest of ideas. They're going to go in there and they're going to fix this, or this for their state, and they're really exciting. Oh, Britt, I worked every day with Drew Peterson, 40 hours a week for over a year. He was an incredible thing. I'm not sure what it was. This is a terrifying time that we're living in. right? It really is. Because throughout history, scandals have broken and things have happened and people distrusted government. But now, this bad boy here, there are more people that get news and get discussions about things like news on platforms like this. And if you begin to trust the person that you're talking to, then they can tell you things and bend it to their will, right? Unless they're coming with some kind of factual stuff. For instance, there are 3 charges in New York, right? And those charges are rape, sexual assault, or sexual abuse. Trump didn't get convicted of rape. He didn't get convicted of sexual assault. And fascinatingly enough, the woman saying that accused him of this didn't say, he digitally penetrated me. That was the problem. She said he raped me. It went on for a long time until she finally fought him off. That's the story, right? Then why does a jury in 3 hours look at the evidence and go, don't believe it happened, but I do believe he penetrated her with his finger? You believe the witness, or you think the witness is full of shit. Those are usually the 2 options. And I'm not saying you can't go to a lesser crime, but that normally goes like this. Somebody shoots somebody, and then the defense makes a case for why this isn't murder 1. The guy didn't premeditate this. He wasn't at home going, I'm going to whack this dude. They got into an argument over a girl in a parking lot. The fight broke out. He starts to lose. He pulls his piece and shoots him. Murder 2. So they drop the charge down. But if you don't believe the guy was in the parking lot, what's the justification for why one of those things happened and the other one didn't? Because as a critical thinker, that does not make a hell of a lot of sense to me. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody. I really am not. And I have been, I have always been fairly deep into, there is always forgiveness. I saw that comment. There's always forgiveness for someone. But you know what? I don't know that makes redemption or any such thing. If a person actually wants to turn their life around, and a person, I've spent a lot of time around convicts, and there are some that really want to turn their life around. They really want to make a difference, and just be a citizen that does the right thing and things of that nature. But she did say he digitally penetrated. It's in the testimony. Law definition of rape. No. So here's the problem with that. The definition of rape in New York is the insertion of a penis into a woman, right? The lesser crime of digitally penetrating someone, they don't call rape. What they call that in the state of New York, and there is a New York state statute for it, is sexual abuse, not sexual assault. That's another whole different tier. Sexual abuse is defined as unwanted touching of any kind, including and up to digital penetration of any part of the body. Okay, so, but what is really odd is you're either going to believe the story that he went in there and that this happened. So the jury heard all of the testimony and went, okay, we believe he went in there. We don't believe he finished the act. So then you believe the woman that said this is being dishonest. If you believe that the person bringing the charges is dishonest, does it not make sense that you might question the rest of it? Because if you think that there's a compelling case for one versus the other, you should read the case. Their argument was, well, we can bring a couple of people in here that claim that at such and such a time, check out the Brett Kavanaugh case. Put a 2 in the chat if you think Brett Kavanaugh was guilty. Please. Brett Kavanaugh's problem was that Trump put him in there. That was Brett Kavanaugh's problem. You realize that every single witness that Blasey Ford claimed saw it, said never been to that party, don't know what the hell she's talking about. They have continued to investigate that woman since that ended. There is no truth to what happened to Brett Kavanaugh. That was a lie. And she has since said, well, I knew that he was going to end abortion if he got in there. That's why I did it. But boy, oh boy, how many people in the country call this guy a rapist? How many people in the country are still calling this dude a rapist? You know when that happened? Same time frame, that they're just peppering as much stuff as they can to make Trump and everybody associated with him look like a scumbag and a rapist. Why? Because they don't want this dude in office. They don't want this dude in office. And I've said, I'm pissed at Trump. I'm not a fan currently. But I'll tell you something. The more I research this and the more I realize how badly all of the powers that be in Washington didn't want this guy president, I'm starting to go, that might be a really good indication. If every dirty piece of crap up there thinks this guy's dangerous, maybe he isn't dirtier than them, right? Maybe they're pissed off because he's not. Britt, you can disagree. Tell me how. Tell me how. You believe that Brett Kavanaugh did it? No hard feelings. We can agree to disagree. If I were you, I would do a little research on exactly what has happened in the Brett Kavanaugh case. Hey, Keelanova, tell me what you're trying to do with this comment, because I kind of want to just smack you out of here at this point. Hey, if you got a wrench, just get rid of Kilo for the day. The world needs a yardstick. They don't need judges. I'm not trying to execute anybody. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to point out that critical thinking is dead in this country. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to point out and prove. So how come the FBI didn't look into any of the tips they got? Oh, Britt, but they did. But they did. They have been looking into this, not because the FBI was willing to look into it, because the FBI knew that they were going to come up with not what the narrative was supposed to be, which is that he was a rapist. They're trying to keep this guy off the bench. Once they were gone, a new party came in and the FBI went, go investigate all of this. And every single witness she listed said, nope, there was not one witness. There was not one witness. Hey, Keelanova, I've been working on this for a hot minute. I'm pointing out the problems in this case. Everybody jumps to conclusions, right? Everybody jumps to conclusions on things because I saw it on the internet, or I read this, or any of these things. This is an issue. If we don't get people who start doing a little bit of research, with all due respect, go look up. There was a congressional investigation into this. Go read what has happened, right, to the Blasey Ford. I can come back and show it all to you. But the bottom line is, now get your receipts and get back to me. Well, pointing out that I've been people have been accusing me of rape, and then tying that to, yeah, I'm glad I'm not anybody's judge or jury. Not sure where you're going with that, but that's great. Good. I love that, Britt. I love deep diver researchers. I really do. Look into Blasey Ford's. This is post, right? Because you're right. The FBI wasn't trying to disprove this, right? We had Nancy Pelosi saying, I believe her. Oh, right? Everybody says, well, you really should believe women. Yeah, you should. But when that gets repeated again and again and again, you can't tell me this stuff doesn't get used as weapons, because it does. And it's become very popular politically to use this as weapons, because they know the world is not going to say this girl's full of crap, even if she is. I'm sorry, but that's kind of where we're at, man. That's kind of where we're at. We've gotten to a point now where most people's deep dive research is hanging out on YouTube and listening to talking heads. And most of them repeat the exact same thing over and over again. You can go watch a ton of videos today. They're going to tell you that Diddy just almost got killed in jail. I'll tell you something about being locked up. If a guy puts a knife to your throat, he ain't threatening you. He's going to cut your throat. There's not a lot of jaw jacking and threatening that goes on in there. It's not like you see in the movies, right? It's just not. If somebody put a knife to his throat, it was because he did something worth getting it cut. The story doesn't ring true. And there's also no shot written, right? If somebody puts a knife to somebody's throat, Diddy didn't tell on him. He told on to the rest of the world. He wants us to believe he went to the cops and the cops did nothing. That's the end of a career. And all you got to do is wait till the next shift. And when that comes up, cops come on, tell one of them. There's 3 guards on every shift. The odds that you tell 6 of them and not one of them doesn't go, oh boy, yeah, I'll go report that. I don't want to lose my job. It's a BS story. It came out from his attorneys. His attorneys are saying anything they can to try to get the guy out. His attorneys are saying, yeah, you know what? The Trump White House is going to commute this man's sentence. Didn't happen today, did it? It was supposed to happen today, but they can gin up an awful lot of views. They can get people angry. And I did this. I did it unwittingly. I promise you I did. I wasn't trying to mislead anybody. But I believed every single story that came out. And I didn't critical think anything. And I didn't go and do any kind of research. And I told you guys a lot of stuff that was absolute BS. As much as it might make people feel good to say they always believe the victims, you can't. It has to be case by case, because there are victims who lie. Yeah, there are. Now, all I'm asking is for a little critical thinking. None of these stories make sense. And you can go and do the same stuff I do, right? You can go and there are apps you can go to calculate the odds. You put in anything, and they'll ask for more parameters if you don't give them enough of them. But what are the odds? What are the odds in a place that has a jury pool of 100, where 86% of people vote in one direction and 90% of the media leans in one direction, right? Where hundreds of stories, 50 a year, that turn out to be absolute BS, lies about the sitting president, right, are put into print and circulated and then talked about on every talking head show. There are still people to this day who are talking about how Trump said, and I don't mean people in here, I'm talking about people on major news channels who still say that Trump said there were good people on both sides of that protest and not finish his sentence. That's absolutely an unconscionable. And you know what? I know I'm pissing people off because we get invested in things and we start to believe stuff because we believe it. Believing something because you believe it is horrific. Critical thinking to say, you know what? I heard this. Look, there are things that I've researched that I don't believe anymore. That's what happened with Diddy. Make no mistake, there are a bunch of cases out there against Diddy that are completely legit, and they're going to mess this dude's life up. He is a monster, and he's been a monster for a really long time. But the numbers that Busby put out, right? The stories of pistol whipping people and taking 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds, most of those aren't holding up to any scrutiny. You know, they're not. And I would really, it's called, if I am correct, it's research. There you go. It's research. And it should be. Somebody should be doing it. I'm sorry they stopped reporting fairly. I'm sorry, they stopped reporting fairly a long time ago. There was a time you didn't know which way news reporters leaned politically. Do you want to hear something fascinating? If you take a course in journalism, right, the first thing they tell you is, if the person reading your story knows which political leanings you have failed. The idea is who, what, when, where, not the whys, right? Unless it's obvious, right? If the guy leaves a suicide note that says, I took my life because my wife cheated on me, now you can do the who, what, when, where, why, right? But if it's open and you have no idea and you say, well, I think it's probably the Republicans' fault or it's probably the Democrats' fault. But if it's systematic, one thing after another, and they get debunked, but that doesn't matter because you've already done the damage. Hello, Kelly. The damage is done. You know, how does a guy rebuild his reputation after 200? By the way, that's insane. 204 years, we're approaching 100 already in this term. They're still doing everything they can to get rid of this guy, except now, well, they're shooting at him a lot. You know, there was another shooter's nest, as they called it, right? This is about 4 or 5 days ago. And on a tree, looking down at where Trump's plane lands in Florida, they had one. I grew up in D.C. and was in the elite school system of Kavanaugh. I know the people and culture. Critical thinking is key that we absolutely agree on. Well, I'll tell you something. I grew up in a town called Woodstock, right? It's a small town in the Northeast. And I graduated high school in 1988. And every single person I knew was really into drugs. It was kind of a tough graduating class. 88 was not a great time for sobriety. We lost so many people from my graduating class within the first year. It's terrifying. Like enough to be percentages, you know, 3-4% of the graduating class kind of thing. Everyone was dying. But if I were to say, I know what that town is like now, I know what that culture is like now, I haven't been there in 40 years. But I had somebody say to me, maybe 30 years, but I had somebody say to me, you wouldn't recognize the school. And he started telling me about all of these things that you'd see in Portland that are very, very popular in that school now. Well, when I was there, that was a very, very right-leaning place. The people that she said were there, she changed the number from 4 to 6. Every single one of them said, no idea what she's talking about. Never saw Brett Kavanaugh at a party. This is the research that's been done. And she said, you can look this up. I'm not making it up. But critical thinking is key. And unfortunately, the more we allow search engines to do research for us, you know, when people say to me, I Googled it, the hell does that mean? I mean, no disrespect, but what does that mean? The people that put Google together, you have to trust their leanings. So if the search engine says, listen, before you do anything else, I want you to check for the top 5 sources, The Guardian, CNN, MSNBC, right? You're getting a slant that is unbelievable. And if you look at the thumbnails, you'll go, oh man, this is it. I know the story. No, you don't. I promise you. We don't report news. We report opinion. And the people that watch the left, they want their echo chamber. They want to feel like they're right. They want to hear that the other side is losing. And the people on the right, same thing. They want their stuff echoed back to them. They want to be told that they're right and that they're smarter than the other side and that those people are evil and that they're not. And you know what? Here's where I may agree, right, with a lot of you. It's not as easy as saying everybody on this side is evil or everyone on that side is evil, because the truth is that's the bullshit narrative they're shoving down our faces to make us hate each other, to make families not go to Thanksgiving dinner together. Because all of these things out here, the middle is so much more of the country. Sure, they might believe a little from column A and a little from column B, and that's called critical thinking. How can you agree with every single thing that one party believes? What if you say, you know what, I think Americans should be able to have a gun? Well, then you can't vote one direction, right? Or if you go, well, you know what, I'm pro-choice. Well, then you can't have anything to do with the other side, right? Because we can't critical think and say, if one of them is taking care of things fiscally that I really believe in, and one of them leans really hard on the social stuff, am I happy with what's going on with either of these? Is one of them mean more to me than the other? Because maybe you won't go, well, I'm going to vote for this guy even though I think he's a tool. Because, you know, the other guy is for a party that I'm supposed to hate. We're all in echo chambers. We need to check all sources, including those we disagree with. Sometimes the other side has a point. My God, they always have a point. They do. They always have a point. I'll give you a great example. But the points get bastardized if you don't research it. Because there are people all over the country and there are people in parts of the world that this is. Britt, I'll bring you on for an old school debate. You bring your facts, I'll bring mine. Would love to have you on. Send me an email to tommyscoville@gmail.com. And we can do it old school. We'll be respectful as hell. You bring your notes, I'll bring mine. But you might want to research post, right? After Kavanaugh was put in look at the investigations done afterwards. Because just like a lot of other things that have happened, Crossfire, Hurricane, all of these things that were designed to try to screw up somebody that was in office, you can say that that's not what it was done for. How does one president get 40 wrong stories written about him and the next one gets 200 in the same time frame, in the same 4-year period of time? Right? Well, the press gets out of control. Well, they got out of control first with Trump. You think they'd be ramping up, right? No, because they got their guy in. And when their guy got in, there were no story. And the misprints were always about things like, well, they said that the jobs rate was this, and then they had to go back. They weren't saying, he's raping kids. They weren't saying he was on Epstein's plane going to the island. Do you know how many papers printed that? He's not on the manifest going to the island. That never happened, but there are people who still believe it. There are people who send me emails. The guy was on the island. You can check the manifest. I have. Those don't exist. Late to the show, but I'm starting from the top. Well, Susie Q's, I'm glad you're here. Barbara Waite says, I'm really so damn tired of voting for the lesser of two evils. Was it always this way and I was just oblivious? No, it wasn't this way because there weren't echo chambers to amplify the voices. I'll tell you when it changed. It changed when the Republicans let Newt Gingrich, right, start doing, this is no joke. This is how Newt became as powerful. Hey, Relatable Reese, good to see you. Glad you're here. So this is what happened. Newt Gingrich used to go up and to where C-SPAN would film in the Capitol. And at night, they don't turn the cameras off. It's a live feed. They don't edit anything. C-SPAN was just showing politicians talking. So he would go up at night when no one was there, and he would just do his speeches and rant and rave, and he would be talking to nobody, but the cameras couldn't see that. And this actually got the guy to start gaining a little traction, and he ends up Speaker of the House. And his platform was, we're not going to work with the other side. You can research this. How's that? The Republicans caused all this crap. Didn't see that one coming, did you? But Newt Gingrich said, we're not going to work with the other side. And when you do stuff like that, I mean, Ronald Reagan, whether you liked him or hated him, he used to have the Democrats come to the kitchen cabinet. He would have Tip O'Neill over. They'd have a couple of beers, and they would work through stuff. I can't remember the last time, no matter how much they said, I'm going to reach across the aisle. Nobody reaches across the aisle unless it's to give somebody the finger, right, or to smack somebody. But Newt Gingrich, make no mistake. In fact, we never even used the terms blue and red state before that. But once you put colors on anything, ask the Bloods and the Crips. Once you start putting colors on things, once you become so tribal that you got to tick every box, right? So if I'm going to go this way, the vaccine thing's an issue. I got to go one way on that. It should be one from column A and one from column B. It should be maybe a couple of 100 parties. It sure as crap needs to be more than 2, especially when both of them are completely tainted. There are countries, whether you realize it or not, there are countries where they have gone in and said, all of you are under investigation. To every politician there, we're going to clean this place out. America has an ingrained system that doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. Stuff that is so stupid that when you hear it out loud, you go, there's no way that this is true. Like we're spending $4 million a minute currently. That's what we're borrowing, $4 million a minute. Can't be true, right? It's just insane. But there's so much worse. When you start hearing that every single government function on planet Earth, if they spend their entire budget, if they blow every dollar of their budget, the next year that budget goes up by 15%. And we've been doing that forever. And it has become an entrenched bureaucracy where nobody says at the end of the year, hey, I got $100 grand left in the account. Huh? How did I do? Well, then you're not getting the 15% bump next year. I saw it first in prison. I was ordering stuff. I was the guy that worked in the kitchen. Drew Peterson was the other guy that worked with me. And our boss came in and said, we're getting rid of the ovens. Get a bunch of big dudes. I was like, how old are those ovens? It's like 3 or 4 years. I'm like, aren't they supposed to last 30 years? Like, these are prison industrial. He goes, yeah, but we got a lot of money in the account. We got to blow by mid-September. They bought all new chairs for the staff calf. They paid somebody to come in and airbrush the walls. We gave boxes of Pop-Tarts to every single inmate that came through the line for a couple of weeks. Right? Name brand ones. Don't get the knockoffs. We got to blow all this money so that next year we can get 15% more. I wonder how we got $39 trillion in debt. Or do you think maybe it was giving money to countries that don't actually exist? You realize that when Musk started going through and looking at all this, there are countries that start there. We're still giving money to them. Who the hell is getting that? Right? It got absolutely ugly. And it's never going to go back. I mean, unless you look, you could do Article 3 convention, right? Or is it Article 5 convention? I think it's Article 3. Anyway, if you get like 2/3 of the states to agree that you want to go back and amend the Constitution, you can do it. And you can start putting some safeguards in there. Things like, you know what? We got to get rid of lobbyists. We got to get rid of people that show up on the Hill and say, hey, Todd, good to see you, my friend. People who show up on the Hill and go, here's the bill that we wrote for you. It shouldn't go down like that. You shouldn't be able to work in Congress and get the kind of rich that these people do. And you know what? All of them do it. Everybody loves to yell about Nancy Pelosi. Both sides of the aisle are raping Wall Street. Because if you work in government, you know whether or not certain government contracts are going to go through or not go through a month beforehand. So you just start buying stock low, knowing that as soon as that's announced, the stock's going to go through the roof. And that's not illegal. It's illegal as hell if you do it. Ask Martha Stewart. And you know what? All Martha Stewart did was call a friend and say the business isn't doing well, man. Right? She told him, you might want to get rid of some of the stock because bad stuff is about to happen. She called a friend and said that. People on the Hill do this every single day. Every day. The other example I use is what if you work on the National Transportation Safety Board and you know that a plane crash is being investigated? And there are 2 options to this plane crash. It was either one of the airlines, we'll call it Delta, or the company that was repairing the engines for Delta. Delta probably does it for themselves, but for this illustration, they bring in a company to do it. You could bet on both of those companies. If you knew a month ahead of time that it was Delta's fault, right? Then you could short Delta stock knowing that the stock is going to drop when people find out. And you could go long on the other one. So you're betting one stock goes up, one stock goes down. That's how people get in there making $300,000 a year tops. But when they leave after 20 years, they got $150 million in the bank. And they're doing it on both sides. Why do you think somebody wants to go to Washington to be a politician for 25 or 30 years? Right? Why? There should be term limits. But I'm telling you, people always say to me, there's just no quick way to fix it, though, Tommy. No matter what you do, there's no quick way. How about if the entire country just started repeating the phrase, no incumbents? When we go to the polls, nobody that's ever been in office is going to get elected. We're not going to vote for one of them. You could literally kick everybody out of office, and it would take you about 6 years. Nobody that has ever served in politics are we going to elect. Let's elect some plumbers, right? Some carpenters, some teachers, some nurses, right? These kind of people, right? Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Sounds like the founding fathers. We had blacksmiths, silversmiths, right? Guys that were growing food, guys that were brewing beer. That might be a shit show. Couldn't be any worse than what we got now, Britt. Could not be any worse than what we got now. You know, the critical thinking thing too. If you say to even somebody really intelligent, I'm starting a country today, right? And I don't want to screw this country up. So what I need is a list of about 100 laws that are really important. The average person is going to struggle to give you 100 laws. Just for grins, Google how many laws get passed every year in the United States between state and federal government. They have to keep writing laws because that's what they get elected to do. So even if there's really not much going on, then they'll just start micromanaging the dog shit out of your life. Like how high a urinal has to be from the ground up to the bottom of the lip. How far it has to be from the left wall and from the ceiling. Because God forbid that thing's an inch off, right? It's fascinating to me that the more developed the country gets, the more the government seems to really get into every aspect of life. I know during the last administration, they were talking about getting contracts to do things like pave or build buildings or whatever could take up to 16 months. How the hell are you going to make anything happen if it takes 16 months to get permits to go and do the things that you have to do? It's amazing to me, but that's what happens. We run out of stuff. We could demand no PACs. Oh, that should have happened, right? Political Action Committee should be gone. The Political Action Committee is just a way to get around the limits that government says that any human being can donate to somebody running for office. That's capped. You know, you go, yeah, he gives $1 million to Trump to run for office. He doesn't give him more than about $4,000. Now he can give the rest of that to a Political Action Committee and trust to believe that's going on. Right? That's absolutely going on. It needs to stop because they buy and sell politicians. And on the same token, they buy and sell prosecutors. Ask Letitia James, right? Ask the gentleman that prosecuted Trump on the rape charge that got dropped down to a abuse charge. And, defamation, that as well. But both of them paid for by Soros. I'm sorry, if George Soros is near you, I don't want to know you. Just look at the things that this dude's done in his life and bragged about, right? I don't know, man. Maybe it's me. But don't want to get anybody too hot and bothered and angry at me. But, it would make me feel bad. Can you hear that from up here? They're playing football over there, folks. I think I just heard a goal. Did you? Barely reverbing. All righty, people. Listen, put in the chat anything you want me to talk about, because a bunch of you sent some emails, but it's one person's opinion. So what I'd like to do is tell me something you guys want to talk about. I'll be more than happy to do it. And if you want to have that healthy debate, you just send it off to TommyScoville@gmail.com. I'd love to have you on, and we could just sit and talk like people that disagree and still like one another. That kind of conversation maybe could save the place. Right? It seems to have died. But that kind of conversation might just save the place. You know, you could also just have debates on opinion. But if you can come up with some stuff to back that opinion up, it's usually a little bit stronger. If not, you end up looking like Will Ferrell from Old School. That's how you debate. That's how you do it. All righty. Between now and the next time I see you, do me a favor. Put a little steel in your spine, a little love in your heart, and something non-alcoholic in your coffee mug. I am Tommy. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.